Hi, my name is Lily Ling, and I am the music director and conductor for the Ann Peggy Company of Hamilton.
What do you love most about your occupation, and what do you least like about it?
um, I love my job. I feel incredibly fortunate to be able to make music for a living and not only performing it, but also being able to take such a momentous story and a show like Hamilton and to be able to tour it around the country. I've been in the Bay Area for about a year now. It's nice to restart post COVID, but also being in a city that is so multicultural. And so to me, that's the most amazing thing about my job. I think the thing I enjoy the least about my job is we don't get weekends. So we have opposite schedules like everybody. Unlike everybody else. So we perform in the evenings and we are the busiest on weekends. So a lot of times, even going out to a movie or going out for dinner are not options for those of us who work in theater. So if I were to pick a negative, that would be it. But that's pretty much it.
I feel like the Hamilton when I tried to buy tickets one time, and it was like every day, and I was like, "Dang, that's crazy." Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
very time consuming. Yes.
hmm
So my next question is, why did you choose to go into theater and how did you decide it? And did you have a specific inspiration slash experience?
Uh, that's a great question. Most people, as I like to say, don't grow up thinking I'm going to be a conductor or a music director for musical theater. So I will say I've kind of fallen into it very luckily. So what inspired me, I have an undergrad. I actually have a 5-year undergrad. My first year was in pre-med because I'm the only child of immigrants. I am an immigrant myself. And so my parents wanted me to be a doctor, and that was not something I enjoyed. So I actually ended up going into music. I restarted my undergrad and I did an undergrad in piano performance. I'm in classical piano. And it was around that time where I discovered theater really, doing a lot of things. I went to school at the University of Toronto. And so I got involved in the theater community. And the thing I love about my job and about theater, it is, in my opinion, the most collaborative art form. You have music, dance, direction, movement, but then also you have the lights and costume and hair and technical wizardry, everything coming together. And I think it is, again, one of the most collaborative, amazing art forms. So that's why I love it so much. Yeah.
Awesome. That sounds so fun. What is something about your profession you wish you knew when you first started?
The long hours, I think, the one thing I knew about my profession, I think it's one of those things where I truly love the people that I'm around. But the long hours is, it's very much what we call feast or famine. You go from contract to contract. And so that's one thing, what does it mean to be a freelance musician? So that's one thing. And then the other thing I think I wish I would have known, it's just more about the business of the business, which is that, the higher you go, by the time I am at my job, which I love, the music making is probably, I would say, like 30% of the job. There's so many other skills to have to go into it, whether it's you're kind of a therapist, talking to actors and talking to musicians, and the art of giving a note to somebody, and then being the head of your own department and looking at like logging in hours and making schedules and things like that. Everything, like there's such a big managerial part of it. So the one thing that we don't ever really learn about when you're in school, when you are in a conservatory, is you don't learn about the practical side of things. You just learn how to play. So that is one thing that I wish I knew, but so much of it is learning on the job.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing. I was wondering, did you ever feel like you had to like self-advocate for yourself sometimes?
I think in the arts, and especially in music,
hmm
in the arts, I always remind young actors and musicians that what we do is a trade. And what that
Mhm.
means is, after you're finished school, your learning doesn't stop, and you work under and hopefully apprentice under people who have come before you, where you learn about and you're in the room and you're observing, and then you slowly learn to do more, and you gain more skills that way. You don't learn about unlike, I guess, the STEM field, where you learn all the things, the building blocks of it all.
Mhm.
So for me, it was, yeah, when you're younger, you have these ideas, but then you quickly learn that it's so much, the education doesn't stop, so it's so much about the observing and really just inhabiting what is happening in the room. um, so yeah, and I will say, when I was first starting, and as like a young female,
Mhm.
and as a woman of color, what does it mean? And straddling that line between being assertive and knowing what you want, and then also not becoming too bossy. Maybe we'll use that B
Mhm.
word. And where and and how to say something, and how to
Mhm.
kind of make your point across, and or to achieve something that you need to do, and just learning verbiage and how to speak to people, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that insight.
My next question is, so I know you mentioned different experiences, especially when you were younger, but has there been especially memorable or fulfilling experiences that you had? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think so I was born in China and immigrated to and I'm Canadian, so I grew up in Vancouver when I was 8. And a few years ago, when Shanghai Disney opened, I was very lucky to have been invited and hired to be the associate conductor of The Lion King. And it was in Chinese. If you know the show at all, anything that's in English was in Mandarin, and then anything else were in the different African dialects like Bantu and Xhosa, and it was really amazing, and this amazing homecoming, and especially when I have family and friends, when my parents could see me conduct a Broadway musical, but in Chinese in China. And I think that is a feeling that I'll never forget, for sure.
That's so cool. But how old were you when you first got that job?
I was finishing grad school, so I think I was in my, I was 30
Mhm. Oh,
when that
nice.
happened. Yes, yes,
That's
yes,
so
yes.
cool. Yeah. So my next question is, what was the biggest challenge you faced in your career and what did you learn from it?
The biggest challenge, I would probably say right now, um, working on, so Hamilton, we opened last night. We are the first of the Hamiltons on the continent to reopen, as we were the first to shut down. It has been, what is it, a year, 4 or 5 months and something. There was statistics that that I didn't pay attention to, but doing this and leading a company, training new musicians and a new team through COVID is hard, and given also the social and political unrest that we've had coming back into the studio, and navigating a lot of different social issues, and but then still revisiting a piece that has existed, and how do we approach those things, and how do we approach the art form in a new way, that I would say right now is probably one of the biggest challenges. And what does it mean to, when you're conducting a show, regardless of what has been happening in the building, conveying a sense of calm and feeding energy to the actors, and joy, and really doing the show and the music justice. And in giving the audience, what they pay for, balancing all of those things, I think it's probably right now, it's probably one of the most trying times I think, for anybody, any artist who is restarting.
I know you mentioned that you were in grad school during
Hmm.
when you helped out with Shanghai Disneyland's The Lion King. What level of education do you think you need to pursue to become a musical director?
That's a great question. I think music directors, fortunately, have come from all walks of life. I have had mentors who have very similar background as me as pianists. Some of them are jazz pianists. I've also There's some of the most famous conductors or legendary music directors were drummers, or my associate, the person who trained me how to conduct Lion King, he was actually a performer and a drummer himself, and then changed over to music direction. And that is all to say that I think education is really important, but I think, like I was saying before, that this is a trade. So much of it is actually being in the room and learning on the job. So I know people who also don't have a degree, and I think that's okay because music is music, and so much of it you can't learn from textbooks and you can't learn in school. And Broadway and music direction specifically is an art form that is still evolving and continues to evolve with our socio and political and popular culture. So in a most amazing way, you can't study too much of it. You have to know what comes before you, but you are working on new things that are evolving and growing for hopefully for a very, very long time. So myself, I have an undergrad in piano performance, in classical piano. I also have an MFA, so a Master of Fine Arts in music direction specifically. And I'm actually starting, probably maybe not the smartest thing to do, but I'm starting a doctoral degree in about a month. But those are things that are of interest to me. And I think the one thing as a music director that you definitely need is piano skills, some conducting skills. And then really if you want to go to school, is making sure that you're going to school and studying under somebody who shares a similar ethos as you, somebody whose career you may want to mimic, somebody who you feel like you can learn from, as opposed to you have to go to an Ivy League or something like that. Like for music direction and for the arts, it's something just slightly different.
Definitely. I think hands-on experience and just learning is just the most powerful thing. Then
Absolutely.
rather, yeah. So my next question is, what are your goals and hopes for the future? And this could be either personal or professional.
My goals and hope for the future, I think, I in the short term is to get the show back on the road. And to be able to both personally and professionally, to be able to restart the company and be a part of the greater Hamilton company, leading. And I know people say this a lot, but like with kindness and, by example. I think professionally speaking, I would love to, as a Canadian, I would love to move to New York and work with the best in the industry. And then also, as I had mentioned before, I'm starting a doctorate degree in education. And that's something that I'm very interested in terms of working, uh, changing, as we are talking about right now, a lot of social and systematic change. And I personally believe that a lot of those changes need to start, takes generations, and it needs to start at the very earliest level. So I'm very interested in infusing music and the performing arts and philosophy into a K-6 curriculum. So education and early childhood education is something that is very near and dear to my heart. So maybe that is the new chapter or the second chapter of what I would love to do.
That's really interesting. I also agree that education is like really important. It's one of like the most important things. My question is, what advice would you give a high schooler or college student who wants to pursue a career in your field?
Move to New York if you can. And try to like and just get to know, understand the history of the craft. There are so many shows that like we all know about that are on Broadway, but there is an amazing history of music theater. And if you look at it through the socio and political timeline of America, you actually get to learn a lot, not only about this country, and for a Canadian, it was an amazing thing to do, but also just learning about the history of the craft. And then don't be afraid to reach out to people. It's a actually very idiosyncratic and very small and niche community. But if you ever get a chance to visit a place like New York, people will receive you with open arms and they will meet with you. And don't be afraid to just say, hey, I would love to like come watch you work, or I would love to like be in the room and ask for advice. And just always say yes if an opportunity comes up, because the only way to learn is to do. There are many times where I was offered a job and somebody said, oh, do you know how to use this program? And my voice went up and I was like, yeah, and then I learned. So be flexible, be malleable, and always be curious.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that awesome advice. I'll totally use that because at times it can be kind of scary, like looking at different opportunities and doubting yourself sometimes, but it's good to learn. My last question is kind of a fun one. What scene in Hamilton was the most challenging to direct?
Most people ask what are my favorites, but I also think I can parlay into that a little bit. What we have to do as music directors is we have to, in rehearsal, sometimes be able to play and rap at the same time. Rap is not a thing that I grew up doing. I'm not great at it. I could like after about 3 years of Hamilton, I can do some of it now. So I think for me, the hardest thing to do, and Lin-Manuel Miranda will tell you this, one of the hardest raps is Angelica's raps. So Satisfied is my favorite thing to play, but also the hardest thing to do, to be able to play and rap like that is very challenging. And so for me, I would say it is scary, but enjoyable. It is a thrill to perform any day, every day. But for me, that's probably one of the most like challenging things to do. And I think in general, in the show, just having to play and rap at the same time that's a thing with Hamilton. That's very specific to Hamilton that we have to do. But yeah, I just love this show so much. So it's always a challenge. You're always learning.
Thank you. Definitely. I tried doing Satisfied on karaoke, cannot do. I just let her sing because there's no way I can keep up.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, that's kind of it for today. So thank you so much, Lily, for meeting with us. Evan,
My
do you have
pleasure.
any other questions? So on behalf of Essence Change, we want to thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule. And we want to wish you all the luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and including me in this. And good luck.